One scorching afternoon, as the sun burned against the thatched roofs of Obazu, a stranger appeared on the dusty path leading into the village. She carried nothing but a woven basket on her arm and a small raffia bag that held her clothes. No companion, no greeting, just her shadow gliding quietly across the red earth. Her name was Olaga, and in all the years since Obazu was founded, no one had ever seen a woman like her. She was beautiful, woven from mystery itself. The people were stunned. The men stared. The women whispered. She said little when she arrived, only that she needed a place to sleep. She chose the abandoned hut near the edge of the forest, a hut that had once belonged to an old hunter who vanished one harmattan season. No one had dared go near it before, but Olaga moved in without fear, sweeping the floor with palm fronds while humming strange songs no one recognized. Soon, she began selling bananas at the village square. What followed could only be described as chaos. Men who once loitered lazily in front of the palm wine joint suddenly remembered they needed bananas. Boys fetched firewood just to pass by her stall. Even the village chief's 2 sons, strong, proud men with wives and children, started visiting her under the excuse of running market errands. Her stall overflowed with admirers every morning. The other women selling tomatoes, onions, or okra complained bitterly. But how could they compete? Her bananas were no different from theirs. Yet Olaga made them appear like golden offerings from a goddess. What none of them knew was that Olaga was not who she seemed. She was never seen near mirrors, never glanced at polished brass, never looked into stream where others admired their reflections. In fact, whenever a mirror was brought near her, whether by accident or mischief, she turned away so quickly it was as if she feared being cursed. And she did fear, because in the mirror her true form waited, a form not made of beauty and bronze, but of shadows, with eyes that glowed like burning coal and a face twisted by ancient sorrow. Only Olaga knew what would happen if the people of Obazu ever saw it. But still, the men came. They brought her gifts, goat meat, palm oil, yams. They hovered near her hut like bees around honey. At first, she resisted, telling them gently but firmly to go home to their wives. But they would not listen. They said she was too beautiful to be alone, that she was sent by the gods themselves, that even their dreams now belonged to her. Slowly, one by one, the affairs began. Husbands began sleeping out at night, knocking softly at her door. Fathers lied to their children, claiming they were going on hunting trips. Even respected elders began to lose their honor under the spell of her allure. The women of Obazu grew bitter. Some threatened to confront her. Some spat when they heard her name. But no one dared approach her directly, for in her eyes was something not quite human. There was something in the air of Obazu, something no one could name. The palm wine still flowed at the joints, but the men of the village had changed. They walked with clouded eyes, laughed without joy, and shouted at the slightest provocation. Their wives, who once wore bright wrappers and sang women's songs, now walked with lowered heads in bitter silence. Children watched in confusion as once loving fathers became short-tempered and estranged. And at the heart of it all stood Olaga, calm, untouched by the storm she had stirred. She did not flinch when women hissed behind her back. She did not respond to accusations or rumors. She simply tied her wrapper, adjusted her basket of bananas, and smiled with that haunting calm that made even her silence feel like a spell. But the women saw the truth in their bruises. Men who once trembled at the thought of raising a hand against their wives now ruled like beasts. They came home smelling of banana peels and the perfume of women who were not their wives. Among all the women nursing broken hearts, one stood out, Adisi. Adisi was not just another village girl. She was a kind who danced like a song, whose laughter brought peace even to grieving mothers. Everyone in Obazu knew her love story with Iman. They had grown up together, fetching water from the stream, sharing mangoes in the bush. When Iman finally married her, the whole village danced. They were the envy of many. So when he too began frequenting Olaga's hut, the village held its breath. Even the elders whispered, "If Olaga can take him on, then no man is safe in this village." Adisi said nothing at first. She cried into her wrapper at night, her heart crumbling like old yam flour. She had known Iman all her life, every scar on his hands, every rhythm of his heartbeat. This new man, the one who came home late with that strange grin, was not the Iman she married. Something was wrong, and she could not wait for the gods to fix it. So Adisi began to watch. She stopped cooking in the mornings. Instead, she wrapped her head with a plain scarf, smeared charcoal beneath her eyes like a hunter, and hid behind trees and shrubs. She followed Olaga's movements, from her banana stall to the stream path, from the village square to the abandoned hut. Adisi kept her distance but never lost sight of her. She watched the men come and go, one with firewood, another with a basket of snails, another with goat meat. She watched Olaga accept every gift with a smile, but never with thanks. The men stumbled away from her hut like drunkards, their eyes glazed and their hearts thumping like drums out of tune. But the most frightening thing of all, Olaga was never afraid. She lived as though she was beyond consequences. That was when Adisi knew this was no ordinary woman. Still, she found nothing tangible to use against her. Then came the day fate revealed the truth. It was a quiet afternoon in Obazu. Olaga, wrapped in her usual blue wrapper, walked through the village square with her basket of bananas on her head. As always, heads turned. Men paused mid-conversation. Boys dropped their slingshots. Even the breeze seemed to hush in her presence. But that day was different. A little boy, no more than 5, was playing near the fruit stalls, giggling as he held a shiny metal mirror his mother had bought from a traveling trader. He waved it at the sun, scattering light playfully across the market. Then, just as Olaga passed, his hand tilted the mirror toward her face. For the first time, the village saw Olaga scream. A piercing, inhuman cry tore from her lips. She dropped her basket, bananas scattering across the earth like spilled gold. She clutched her face and stumbled back. The little boy froze. He looked into the mirror again, and what he saw was not the face of the beautiful woman everyone adored. He saw something twisted, ancient, and monstrous. His tiny hand shook. The mirror dropped. He screamed and ran. His mother caught him in panic, but he thrashed like a child possessed, pointing at Olaga and crying, "She is not real. She is not real." The market fell into stone silence. Women began to murmur. What did this boy see? Why did Olaga scream? Why does she never look into mirrors? Suspicion, once buried beneath envy, rose like smoke. But that was not the worst of it. Days later, Obazu fell into madness. The men, once bound by lust, now turned on each other. Fists flew at the village square. Spears were drawn in front of shrines. Fathers, elders, respected husbands, no longer themselves, fought openly, arguing over who Olaga truly belonged to, who had her heart, who she whispered to in the dead of night. Some tore their clothes. Some wept like children. Others screamed her name like lost souls. And Olaga watched them calmly, her eyes as cold and empty as a moonless night. The women of Obazu wept. Their homes were broken, their sons corrupted, their marriages shattered. That was when Adisi, the one whose heart bled the most, stood up and said to the women, "We cannot sit and die. We must fight this spirit with truth." So they gathered, the women of Obazu dressed in mourning wrappers, carrying calabashes of kola nut, palm wine, and bitter leaf. They journeyed past hills and rivers until they reached the cave of Ojopa, the Dibia whose wisdom was said to come from the 7 kingdoms. He sat cross-legged behind a fire, his hair white as cotton, his eyes clouded with ancient knowledge. When they told him why they had come, Ojopa did not answer. Instead, Ojopa laughed, a deep, echoing laugh that made the birds flee from the trees. The women exchanged fearful glances. Adisi clenched her fists and raised her face. "What is funny, great one?" she asked. Ojopa looked at her and said, "You come seeking the cure, but you do not yet understand the cause." And then, in a voice that shook leaves from the trees, he told them the truth. "Olaga was once one of you. Not just a woman, but the purest among you," he said. Asterisk. She was born with a rare mark on her face, one the gods placed to test humanity's heart. But you failed her. Men turned away in disgust when she passed. Women mocked her beauty. No one married her. And then one night, someone entered her hut and forced himself on her. She knew him. She named him, but he spat in her face and laughed. And the village believed him, not her. She carried his child in shame. And so, one night, she walked into forbidden forest where no mortal dares to go. There, she offered her life and the life of her unborn child to the dark spirit, in exchange for revenge and beauty. She asked to be adored, worshipped, and remembered, and the spirit granted her wish, but at a price. The Olaga you see now is only a shell. Her soul is gone. The woman is no more. What walks your village is the spirit of destruction wearing the skin of a broken girl. Asterisk. The women wept, even the old ones, even the bitter ones. Pity crept into their hearts. But Ojopa raised his hand and silenced them. Do not weep for her. She chose the darkness. She made her vow. Now she is a well that drinks the hearts of men and spits out dust. If you wish to stop her, you must be ready to face not her beauty, but her truth. The fire in the Dibias cave dimmed to glowing embers before he spoke again. His voice was softer now, almost himself. She has done this before. Olaga walks from village to village, leaving behind ashes where love once lived. Her vengeance is not blind, it is deliberate. She feeds on the guilt of unfaithful men. Her victims are always the same: husbands who cheat, fathers who lie, men whose words are sweeter than their spirits. The women lower their eyes to the dusty floor, stung with shame and silent fury. Their husbands had invited this curse into their homes. Their greed, their wandering hands, and their hungry eyes had awakened destruction. How can we stop her? Adisi whispered. Ojopa stared into the smoke for a long time before answering. Then, with a deep breath, he reached behind his shrine and brought out a long, narrow object wrapped in white cloth, a mirror, but not an ordinary one. He unwrapped it slowly, and the firelight flickered against the glass. He whispered into the mirror, his voice low and trembling with power. The glass shimmered faintly, as if it had come alive. This mirror holds the power to strip away illusions, he said, handing it to Adisi. If Olaga looks into it, even for a moment, her true form will appear. But be warned, you must act immediately. Once she is unmasked, follow everything I have told you. No hesitation. If you fail, you may not live to try again. The women bowed deeply, thanking him with offerings, kola nut, and a spotless white fowl, which they placed at his feet. Then they turned back toward Obazu, carrying the enchanted mirror as though it were a sacred body. Meanwhile, in Obazu, the sun had not yet risen when the screams began. Villagers ran to the square clutching wrappers and lanterns. Children cried. Women covered their mouths in horror. There, on the red earth of the village square, lay the lifeless bodies of 3 men. Their eyes were wide open, their faces twisted in terror, their fingers bent inward as though grasping at invisible ropes pulling them into the underworld. The priest was called. The chief was summoned. Prayers were chanted. Libations poured. But no one could explain what had happened, except the women. They knew Olaga had claimed them. All 3 were known to be unfaithful men. Each had visited her hut. Each had abandoned his wife's bed for her intoxicating beauty. By morning, the news spread like wildfire, and yet Olaga was untouched. Later that morning, she walked through the square as calm as a river in the dry season. Her head was held high, her basket of bananas balanced with effortless grace. Not even the bodies of her victims slowed her steps. Her beauty shone brighter than ever, as if it were fed by the chaos itself. The women watched her pass. They clenched their fists. Adisi and the other women's absence burned like a wound. They had not returned yet from their journey, and time was running out. The air was thick with dread. The drums were silent. The beds no longer sang. And the spirit of destruction still walked among them, wearing the face of a goddess. By the morning of the 7th day, Obazu was no longer a village. It was a shadow of itself. 7 men had died. 7 fathers. 7 husbands. 7 souls who had wandered too close to the flame. No one dared to sleep. The market was empty. The drums were still. Children clung to their mothers, and even the birds refused to sing. Then, just as the sun crested the hills and bathed the land in golden light, Adisi and the women returned. They came like warriors, faces tired, eyes sharp, footsteps steady. wrapped in white and ash. They moved through the village quietly, drawing no attention. They carried the enchanted mirror, wrapped in white cloth as the Dibia had instructed them. That morning they did not weep. They acted. At the center of the marketplace, where Olaga often passed, the women placed a mirror upright on a carved wooden stand. They covered it again with white cloth and poured drops of palm oil around it, forming a sacred circle. The air was heavy. The trap was set. Minutes later, she came. Olaga's wrapper was red that day, the color of fire and blood. Her basket was balanced as always, her walk as graceful as a drifting leaf. She had not aged a second. If anything, she was more radiant, more terrifying in her beauty. The villagers watched from behind stalls and doorways. Some held their breath. Others held their hearts. Olaga approached the marketplace. Then, just as she passed a mirror, someone called her name. Olaga. She turned, and in that very instant, the cloth was pulled away. The mirror stood bare, waiting. Olaga's eyes met a reflection, and the earth seemed to stop spinning. She screamed. A sound not a woman, not a human, but something ancient and wrecked with agony. The entire village saw it. The reflection in the mirror. They all saw it. No longer the beautiful woman they adored. What stood in the glass was a dark entity, twisted and burned. Its eyes were wells of black fire. Its mouth stretched in an eternal scream. And then the mirror pulled her in. Her body shimmered, twisted, and vanished, sucked into glass like smoke into a jar. She was trapped. Adisi moved quickly. She knelt before the mirror and broke the sacred egg the Dibia had given them. A great wind rose. Then, in one voice, the women lifted the mirror and shattered it upon the ground. A blinding light burst forth, then silence. No birds, no wind, no cries, just peace. For the first time in weeks, the air was calm, the sun was warm, the earth no longer burned, the ground no longer felt heavy. The spirit was gone. Olaga was never seen again, and in her place a lesson remained. The men of Obazu wept, not only from fear but from shame. They went to their wives on bent knees, barefoot, with broken words. They begged for forgiveness. Some fasted. Some built shrines in their homes to honor loyalty. All of them had learned a terrible truth. When a man breaks his vow, he opens a door, and not all who walk through are women of flesh. And so the story of Olaga, the woman who never looked in mirrors, the spirit who punished unfaithful men, was told from mouth to ear, generation to generation. Children gathered around fires to hear how beauty can hide destruction, and how the mirror, though silent, never lies. And whenever a stranger entered the village, the women watched her carefully, not in hatred, but in memory. The end.